Celebrating 49 years on the air, award-winning Farm Week is a production of Mississippi State University Extension.
Today on Farm Week, more details on those new dietary guidelines that turn the food pyramid on its head. In Southern Gardening, some hot advice on a plant family with a touch of flame. In the markets here in Mississippi, poultry still at the top of the food chain, literally. And in our feature, 1,000 miles from home, one family absolutely living the dream. Farm Week starts right now.
Hello everyone, I'm Zach Ashmore.
And I'm Mike Russell. Great to have you with us again here on Farm Week. As you probably know, the White House has released what it calls an historic reset of U.S. nutrition policy in the face of a national health emergency. David Miller has more.
As Secretary of Health and Human Services, my message is clear: eat real food.
From the podium in the White House briefing room, Trump administration officials literally put the food pyramid on its head this week, flipping concentration of what Americans should eat more and less of in their diets.
Protein and healthy fats are essential, and were wrongly discouraged in prior dietary guidelines. We are ending the war on saturated fats. Diets rich in vegetables and fruits reduce disease risk more effectively than many drugs.
Sugars used in sweetened beverages like soda have been targeted before by the administration and most recently by USDA in their calls for change in how food benefits should be spent.
This is the foundation that will make America healthy again, not just for those of us alive today, but for our children and our children's children and those coming behind.
Dramatically more protein is being proposed from the previously recommended levels. However, many Americans are already ahead of the mark.
I would caution people when they see that news to think about how they eat and how much protein they eat, and maybe that's one place where critical thinking is really important.
The National Pork Producers Council applauded the plan, quote, putting pork front and center on the plate, unquote. The guidelines are released every 5 years as required by law. This version calls for more whole foods and fewer highly processed foods. The American Soybean Association acknowledges the role soybean oil and soy protein play in the health and nutrition of Americans. However, they remain deeply concerned by the rhetoric and selectively cited studies regarding the health and safety of soybean oil in DGA supporting material. Food policy experts say the White House promised a sharp departure from previous plans, and the news this week delivered.
The guidelines also talk about the need to balance calories appropriately and to keep saturated fat at 10% of calories, which is going to be very hard to do if you're eating full-fat dairy and meat.
Before we get much further into 2026, it's useful to look back at 2025, dominated by, you guessed it, trade and tariffs. Paul Yeager has our year in review.
President Donald Trump returned to the White House for his second term, taking the oath of office inside the Capitol. He moved on campaign promises shortly after, signing executive orders rescinding actions taken by President Joe Biden. Once back in the Oval Office, the president addressed immigration, declaring a national emergency on the U.S.-Mexico border, calling for more barriers and an increased crackdown on undocumented immigrants.
The first thing I think that's important to note is
Brooke Rollins was at her confirmation hearing that same week, facing questions from lawmakers. Her approval as Secretary of Agriculture would come shortly after the hearing ended. Tariffs would be the tool of choice for the president, as various duties were slated to be levied on countries all over the world.
The tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America and our farmers starting on April 2nd.
Major trading partners, Canada, Mexico, and China, would be at the forefront of the strategy for much of 2025. Each country would counter with tariffs or policy changes of their own. Again, farmers were watching the action to see how it would impact trade relationships and sales with major global customers.
And today we're standing up for the American worker, and we are finally putting America first.
By May, the U.S. and China reached a deal to cut tariffs for 90 days while continuing to negotiate a long-term trade pact.
So it may be the case where tariffs are just a lot less than they were initially, which both countries can claim as a win.
At the end of October, a breakthrough.
Large amounts, tremendous amounts of the soybeans and other farm products are going to be purchased immediately, starting immediately. If you notice, President Xi authorized yesterday for China to start.
The details of this announcement included a promise by China to buy 12 million metric tons of soybeans in the final months of 2025 and a minimum of 25 million metric tons annually for the next 3 years. China purchased 27 million metric tons of soybeans in 2024. Several courts would hear arguments on trade and rule in various ways in 2025. The U.S. Supreme Court heard a case on the legality of the new tariffs in November. A ruling has yet to be issued and is slated for a 2026 release.
The bridge that is needed to get from the last administration and what basically happened under the last president and the last U.S. Department of Agriculture to this new golden age for farmers, where instead of farming for government checks, they can farm to feed their family and sell their products and pass it on to the next generation, that this bridge is absolutely necessary based on where we are right now.
The next week, the White House announced the bridge payment plan to assist farmers who have lost income due to trade disruptions caused by higher tariffs. The bulk of the $12 billion package is targeted at the major commodities: wheat, corn, soybeans, cotton, peanuts, and rice. $1 billion of that fund has been reserved for specialty crops. This is the highest single year of relief payments for farmers since 1933. Another priority of the Trump administration was addressing foreign sources of labor and immigration. In July, Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins promised to find a balance between deporting undocumented farm workers while not disrupting the agricultural supply chains they support. Weather again played a role in rural America as tornadoes ushered in the new year with a large blast of winter to end it. Cattle prices held at record highs for much of 2025 as years of drought reduced herd sizes, forcing ranchers to liquidate their animal assets. High demand at the grocery store counter, along with a closed Mexican border due to an outbreak of the new world screwworm, added to price pressure. The president pledged to help cut high prices at the grocery store by increasing ground beef imports from Argentina.
On the lighter side, in this week's Southern Gardening segment, Eddie Smith says he really leans on houseplants to keep his indoor spaces attractive and full of life. Here's Eddie.
Today on Southern Gardening, we're taking a closer look at one of the most dependable and stylish houseplants you can grow, Sansevieria, also known as snake plant or mother-in-law's tongue. There are dozens of varieties, each with its own personality. One of the most popular is Sansevieria laurenti, a classic with tall, upright green leaves edged in golden yellow. It's a striking choice for brightening up a corner or adding structure to any indoor space. If you enjoy bold color, take a look at Golden Flame. This variety emerges with rich golden yellow centers that mature into thick, arching leaves. It brings warmth and brightness to rooms, even in low light. For a more modern and sophisticated look, Silver Flame offers broad leaves with a silvery sheen and deep green edges. It's perfect for contemporary decor and adds a cool tone contrast to other houseplants. Sansevierias come in so many shapes and sizes. What makes them such all-stars is their durability. They tolerate low light, infrequent watering, and dry indoor air better than almost any other plant. Let the soil dry between waterings. Use a well-draining potting mix and don't allow them to sit in water. They're also excellent air purifying plants, making them a great addition to homes and offices. So whether you choose Laurenti, Golden Flame, Silver Flame, or one of the many other beautiful varieties, Sansevierias are a stylish, easy care option for any gardener. I'm Eddie Smith. I look forward to seeing you next time on Southern Gardening.
We'll take a break right here, but stick around. Coming up on our Farm Week feature, sometimes you have to make your own luck. The inspiring story of a savvy and hardworking family that produces beef like few others. For them, what started as a dream 1,000 miles from home turned into a multi-generational operation thriving on the pursuit of possibilities. And they did it by honoring their own vision. The story of Boyer Farms coming up on Farm Week. Don't go away.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believe in my own work and in the opportunity I have to make my life useful to humanity. I believe that education is a lifelong process and the greatest university is the home. That my success as a teacher is proportional to those qualities of mind and spirit that give me welcome entrance to the homes of the families that I serve. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
I believe in people and their hopes, their aspirations and their faith. I believed that education, of which extension work is an essential part, is basic in stimulating individual initiative, self-determination, and leadership. I believe that these are the keys to democracy and that people, when given facts they understand, will act not only in their self-interest but also in the interest of society. I believe in intellectual freedom to search for and present the truth without bias and with courteous tolerance towards the views of others. Because I believe these things, I am an extension professional.
Time for the market report. Prices closing up and an important reflection on last year.
A massive report by the USDA showing us what last year amounted to crop-wise. That and a look into Mississippi's #1 ag industry. But first, the numbers. What were the week's biggest gains and losses? And then, the annual USDA report on row crop production. What did it say and what are the analysts thinking? And finally, the annual report on Mississippi's #1 ag industry is out. We reflect on how it came to be. So, markets closed on the upswing, all commodities affected. Let's take a look. The week's biggest gain, lumber up $31, nearly a 6% increase from the previous week. The week's only loss, live cattle, down nearly 2.5 cents. That's a 1% decrease from the previous week. At the start of this new year, we take stock, no pun intended, of last year's total production. At least, that's what many market analysts, John Roach included, are saying. These numbers provide the baseline for this coming year's production. Here's John Roach.
The market really had to regain some lost ground. I mean, we had higher prices earlier in the winter and then slid into the lows that we saw around the first of the year. And we bounced back with traders looking forward to Monday's report from the USDA. People decided they really didn't want to hold some of the short positions, rather take their profits and get out of the way. I think it happened in corn and soybeans as well. We saw both of those markets rally as well. And I think it's just people getting into a neutral position. It's interesting. We look at the 20-day moving average as an indicator of the trend. And all three markets, corn, wheat, and beans, closed right up or right above or just below the 20-day moving average. So prices have gone into neutral zone with everybody waiting to see what the government tells them. These will be the numbers that we use from here on forward as it pertains to last year's production. The crop we harvested in 25 will be finalized on these numbers, and it'll be double counted as we look at the stocks position. So not only will the government say, here's what we believe the production was, they will say, here's what the inventory is in the bin currently, and from that we'll extrapolate, well, a combination of what was the supply and what has been the demand. And from those numbers, we'll look forward and say, well, based on this, we expect demand to be a certain level, and we expect stocks before the next harvest to be at a certain level. So this is really sort of a super kind of a report from a standpoint of all the information that it gives us, and then what we do with it looking forward.
Taking the 2025 overview back to Mississippi, our #1 ag export for 31 years now, broiler chickens, saw production value rise more than 2%. According to MSU Extension, that makes the total value of the Mississippi poultry industry $3.73 billion. This despite ongoing threats from HPAI, or bird flu, which caused egg prices to skyrocket early last year. So, a little history here. How did poultry become the #1 ag commodity in Mississippi? Here's a special report.
You might not know it, but Mississippi is one of the largest broiler chicken producers in the country, #6 in the nation as of 2024, and one of 20 that produce 93% of the national total. In 2023, poultry and eggs generated $3.52 billion. How did that come about? What makes Mississippi so involved with chicken production? We need to go back to the last century to find out. During the early 1900s, the breed of a chicken was more important than its ability to produce eggs. Poultry judges were held in high regard, and exhibitions were commonly held with awards being given to the best of the breed, similar to dog shows today. In the 1920s, crossbreeding began so commercial poultry operations could find chickens who were the best layers. Suffice to say, the old-school breeders were not keen on this trend, and some still feel that way today. However, research has indicated that crossbreeding has helped create the commercial chicken varieties we use today. Throughout the 20s to 40s, it was common for hatcheries to be on or near main streets of towns, and chicks were sold over the counter in small batches, about 10 to 50 chicks. World War II saw the U.S. poultry industry grow. However, this didn't affect Mississippi until the late 40s and early 50s. During this period, more and more poultry companies began purchasing their own breeder flocks. Hatcheries, feed mills, grow-out operations, and processing plants becoming vertically integrated. By the mid-1950s, integrated poultry companies began contracting with farmers to produce eggs and broilers. In general, the contract required the company to provide chickens, feed, and technical knowledge. The farmer provided the land, house, equipment, and labor. The vast majority of Mississippi's broilers and eggs are still produced under this type of arrangement. The Extension Service and the Mississippi Poultry Improvement Association conducted numerous poultry barbecue demonstrations throughout the state to promote chicken consumption. Poultry companies hired men to work with the farmers with whom they had production contracts. These men were called servicemen. Mississippi State University conducted schools to teach the most current technology available. Approximately 150 to 300 poultry workers attended these two-day schools. The industry matured during the 60s and early 70s. Several companies ceased to operate efficiently and were purchased by other companies. The industry consolidated into fewer, larger companies, and that is how it is today.
And that's it for a deeper look into the markets. Mike?
Thanks, Zach. Sometimes in life, and especially in farming or ranching with limited access to land, you have to make your own luck to be ready when opportunity strikes. This week, a family moves to a whole new time zone, forging their own fast lane. John Torpy has more.
A brisk autumn wind greets a herd of limousine bulls and members of the Boyer family on their southern Iowa farm. Jason Boyer and his wife Amy made Iowa their home in the 1990s, venturing away from his family's farming operation in Pennsylvania to pursue their own agricultural vision.
When I moved from back there, I wanted to be a place, I liked the crops, I liked the cows, so I was kind of looking for that quote-unquote combination type place. It wasn't going to be the primo crop ground, and it wasn't going to be just pasture. I wanted kind of the combination, because the cows and the crops and the hay and the rotation all can kind of work together as a whole system.
Jason Boyer's dream of raising cattle began on a hay farm in Pennsylvania. However, that dream was a difficult one to pursue. Land for farming was hard to come by and even harder to afford. An FFA trip to the Midwest in the mid-'80s gave Boyer a chance to steer his dream in a different direction.
I could see what you could buy land for here. You could buy a whole farm here for what a house would cost you back there.
After the farm crisis of the 1980s, prices for farmland in Iowa were significantly less than the cost of farm ground in Pennsylvania. Boyer saw this as an opportunity to establish his own cattle operation with enough space to realize his dream. In 1994, with 24 limousine cattle, Jason and his wife Amy moved away from their families in Pennsylvania to their new farm in southern Iowa. With support from family back home, the Boyers began building their new life in Iowa. Looking to set themselves apart from other producers, the Boyers took a value-added approach to their beef production.
You know, maybe we only had 50 cows, but if we can take the steers and finish them and sell them at farmers market piece by piece or through beef sticks, that expanded to what, we were adding value to what it was.
Seeking to establish themselves outside conventional beef markets, in 2006, the Boyers began producing beef sticks and summer sausage with a unique flavor that can be traced to the Boyers' heritage.
The beef sticks is something we grew in our butcher shop that we had back home. We did bologna or a beef stick. We started up at farmers market and we sampled and sampled and sampled. But once you got them people to taste it, that's all it took.
Yeah, we've sold them for 15 plus years. We've had the beef sticks around, and us three kids, we grew up going to farmers market 26 Saturdays of the year, and beef sticks was one of our main products. And
Caitlin Boyer is the oldest of Jason and Amy Boyer's 3 children. The siblings each have their own stake in the Boyer family farm's operation. With degrees in animal science and marketing, Caitlin helps with making genetic selections for the family's seed stock operation and with marketing decisions for their farm's various products.
Really love the genetic side of things, help select matings. Dad, my brother Casey, and I, and Conrad as well, all work together to make sure that we can accomplish all of those things.
The Boyers believe their investment in the limousine breed is what gives them a market advantage over other breeds.
Having trim, lean beef, having heavy muscle and good ribeye shape, having good yield grades, they're all very crucial with, today's market. So I think that's one of the main things with the limousine cattle is not only their heavy muscle shape, but their feed efficiency is also very valuable too. They gain more on less feed, which, is of value to a lot of different cattle producers.
Today, the Boyer children run their own herds, even though they are mixed together with the one being tended by their dad. This gives them a financial advantage because they can cover input costs in a more efficient way. With hard work and a passion for agriculture, the small seed stock business started by the Boyers has grown into a limousine cattle operation featuring animals with hybrid traits realized by following the Lim Flex program, selling hundreds of bulls and heifers annually all across North America. Seeking additional revenue opportunities for the business, in 2001, the family opened Harvest Barn Marketplace. The 1930s former milking barn is now a showcase for the Boyers beef products, as well as wares from various local producers of craft goods. What can be found on the shelves of the Harvest Barn Marketplace can also be found in gift boxes for an online marketplace that reaches across 40 states. What started as a dream 1,000 miles from home has become a multi-generational operation, thriving on the pursuit of possibilities.
And it's just neat that we all get to work together, building and growing that, and we all can see the similar vision.
Amy and I, we had got married and moved out here. We had 30 cows, 25 cows, and I guess just a dream or a hope, and you know, you never know where that road or dream will take you.
Good advice. Well, next week, say cheese. No one's about to take your picture. We head to Iowa for a dairy success story all about the art of making cheese.
They used to be in the milk business. Now they're known worldwide for their specialty cheese, which they make from Amish and Mennonite milk just down the road.
An old world partnership, the cheesiest story you can imagine. You better believe it. That's next time on Farm Week.
Remember, if you missed a story, look for past episodes of Farm Week on our website at farmweek.tv.
And don't forget to follow us on Facebook and YouTube. See you next week. Thanks for watching.